Pizza Plaza.
Climbing the stairs.
Is that a classic test for testing mics?
No, I just thought of that one.
Pizza Plaza. Gets the emphasis on the P's going.
Yeah. Pizza, pizza. Pizza, pizza.
All right, so today's topic is...
Today's topic is hard work.
Nice.
I wanted to talk about hard work and dive into it a little bit. Figure it out a little bit more. We actually just started this out. Kailey put on a motivational video, Matthew McConaughey motivational video. And what I find sometimes in these motivational videos is they'll really put an emphasis on working hard. They might go as far to say that if you're not successful, it's because you don't work hard and you're lazy. They might say, if you're working 8 hours, there's somebody out there working 12. And in these motivational videos, and maybe I'm watching the wrong ones here, but I find the message a lot of the time is that hard work is very, very important. And how do you guys react if you hear that message that maybe if you want to be successful, you need to work hard, and if you're not successful, one of the missing components is the hard work? What is your reaction if you were to hear that message?
I feel like instinctively that's the answer. That I think it's like you work hard, you do better, but I have a feeling we're about to discuss differently maybe.
Yeah, I'm working
we'll get
hard
into it.
seems to be a huge part of the equation of obtaining your goals.
Yeah, I think it definitely is a huge part of the equation. But if we can in this podcast, I'd like to try to maybe unravel the equation even more. And hearing some of those messages in motivational videos, it started to get me think about why do people work so hard, like some people, and why do some people not work so hard? Like, what are the motivating factors for why somebody might work hard? And then what are some of the potential reasons why somebody might not work hard? And I'll throw it out to you guys first. Like, what do you think might be some reasons why, on either side of that, why somebody may work hard and why somebody may not?
I guess you need some sort of incentive for why you're working hard, which could be a lot of different things, I guess. Financial reasons, or I don't know, even jealousy, or like, I guess those first reasons coming to mind are not necessarily the best reasons why you work hard, but I think they're like really easy ones, you know?
Yeah.
Or obvious ones.
Yeah, and that's what I find interesting, is that maybe not all of the reasons why somebody's working hard are actually like positive necessarily.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I was thinking about what some of the reasons why somebody may work hard, and there's a bit of a split. Some of them I'd consider to be positive, and some maybe not so much. One of them being, like, hard work may come out of a feeling of currently being inadequate.
For sure.
You'll see that push people a lot. I've heard a lot of like stories of one in particular, the David Goggins story of when he was like 300 pounds. He was overweight, and he just felt horrible about himself. He like hated himself, and that pushed him to work really, really hard. And another reason why I think people might work hard is just like a general sense of competitiveness, and that if they're not working hard, they will slide down the like social hierarchy, I guess you'd say, and maybe they'll be considered a loser to whatever their standards, like their own standards. And certain people have different set points for where that would be.
Is it, I'm thinking about when you enjoy something, and for the maybe positive reasons you want to work hard, the hard work suddenly seems less hard, and you maybe don't as often call it hard work because it's something you're enjoying and you want to do. And so hard work for me personally seems to be the things that I don't necessarily want to do, and maybe find motivation in the negatives, and that's what makes me do it.
Right. So maybe it's not even such a bad thing that it's a negative force driving you to work hard, potentially. Like in David Goggins' case, like he actually got really fit, even though along that journey maybe he was kind of hating himself.
Yeah, I find it just an interesting thing, because you would look at a full story like that and say, well, maybe it was a good thing though that he hated himself and felt so bad about himself that pushed him to work so hard to change things. Maybe that was a good thing, but it's I find it kind of a interesting thing, because you obviously don't want the starting point of feeling like you hate yourself to motivate you to work that hard. So yeah,
and then I think you can also, if you're maybe used to that mindset, even once you start to accomplish your goals, the mindset might not necessarily go away, and you can still like be driven by those same things even when you kind of arguably have met your goal, like in the way that other people could now be like, oh, this guy's in great shape, and you're still like, I hate myself. Right. And you're still just internally, it's like a big battle.
Yeah. And I think that's what's very valuable in trying to figure out why you are actually working really hard. Like, let's say you are, or you want to be, to figure out like what the real root of your reasoning is, because I think sometimes you might try to solve certain problems through hard work that they're a little bit disconnected. Like, I was trying to think of examples and I was having a tough time, but the one that I thought of is like, maybe you hear a classic story of somebody who feels kind of bad about themselves, and maybe they're missing certain like the love or like social relations, and they work really, really hard at their job trying to make a lot of money. They'll buy a big house. And maybe in their mind, while they're working really hard, they have the like, I'll show you type of attitude. And they have the expectations that once they work really hard, it'll give them the result of feeling more loved and feeling better about themselves. But the path that they're on with the hard work is a little bit disconnected from what they actually want.
Yeah.
And so then you can end up in the situation like you were describing there, Sammy, where yes, you worked really hard and you might even be getting some results. Maybe you got the like a big house and all this stuff, but you still feel bad because the problem and the thing you're working on weren't actually even totally connected.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
that's very interesting.
It makes me want to like more closely examine the reasons why I work hard on certain things, because I feel like maybe the answers wouldn't be the answers that I would necessarily. Like I might just be like, oh myself. Yeah, I feel like I am doing that just because I want to impress people on social media or something, you know?
Yeah, and I think what happens a lot of the time is like, if you really dig inside yourself for those answers, sometimes you might even find the answer, but then you just dismiss it. You're like, no, that's not the real one.
You don't like the answer and you're like, nah.
That's definitely a tendency. The thing is though, I don't want to just say, oh, like I want to talk about some of the good reasons why somebody might work hard too, and maybe we'll discuss a little bit later to see if you could try to, if you guys would think it'd be possible to try to optimize the good reasons and like just try to have more of the good reasons for working hard than some of the bad reasons. I don't know if it's that simple, but we can talk about it. So couple of the good reasons that I thought is, one is just curiosity for what the hard work could actually produce in your life. Because I think it's fair to say that hard work actually will provide you with more output in life. Like it'll provide you with more. Like a simple example would be, if you are cleaning your house and you work really hard at it, you'll end up with a cleaner house. If you're working out and you work out harder, you'll end up fitter. If you work harder when you're studying, you'll get better results. So those are just simple reasons for why hard work does actually pay off. But like we said, it's a little bit more complicated than simply hard work is good.
Yeah.
But to get back to the positive reasons, the curiosity for what the hard work could produce and kind of visualizing yourself in the future, I find that a good one. If you like start to like conceptualize what benefits could come from consistently putting in effort, what the output would be if the input is continually there, that is like the curiosity and kind of like excitement for what the output could be. I find that can be a driving force to work hard. That's in my opinion a positive thing.
Yeah, I like that idea of playing the long game and kind of looking forward, because I feel like it's kind of easy for me anyway sometimes to get caught up when working really hard on something, and then I'll, like, once it's done, even sometimes I'll take a step back and I'll be like, maybe I shouldn't have put so much time into that thing or something.
Right, you kind of get burnt out.
Yeah,
if you don't,
you get burnt out, and it wasn't necessarily like even an essential thing for my life that was going to develop me further, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's just, again, another reason why it's almost before you set out on the hard work and like just putting in the hours to really examine, why do I want to do this? Yeah. And is this even going to give me the result that I'm looking for? And obviously it can be, it's not a simple, clear answer all the time, but sometimes it might be more obvious than others whether the hard work's going to really result.
That kind of initial reflection can save you a lot of time and energy in the future, because you could end up working towards something that you were like, oh, I'm not into this, but you put a lot of hard work into it. And then, but if you just take a few minutes or whatever it is, depending on the, I don't know, the importance of it, to just say, yeah, why am I doing this? What are the reasons? And then I think that's helpful. And also helpful when you lose motivation or don't want to keep working hard on whatever goal it is, to come back to that list and say, this is why I started in the beginning. And it's good to have those little check-ins.
Right. And in some way, is that a form of laziness and not working hard to not take the time to plan? Because that's like a bit of a tedious task that you have to like work through. That's not necessarily fun to like think, oh, is this really gonna help? Let's just go. That's the more like, just taking the step is the more enjoyable part a lot of the time. But to like really think about it, that's kind of like, that's hard. So is that maybe you're like skipping out on some work by not actually thinking it through all the way?
I don't know. Yeah, potentially. I guess that's part of the equation. So if you skip the first step, you might mess up the rest.
Another positive one that I was thinking is just like some people just love what they do so much that they'll put in a lot of time, and maybe we could argue that that's not necessarily work if you love it so much. It's more just like play, so that's not actually hard work. But from an outsider perspective, you can often see people that are working so hard. They look like they're working so hard, but it's because they are so passionate about it. And that's maybe a more difficult positive reason for working to find in your life, because it kind of just, when you see people like that, I almost consider them like, whoa, you're just lucky, like you found your thing, and you don't mind doing like grind, like what seems to be grinding, but for you I guess it's not really. And I feel like that's
you're
a
less
rare
likely
thing
to burn out in those situations, I feel like.
If you really enjoy what you do. I think so. I think enjoying something, having a passion for it is huge. Like, you can't sustain doing something, whether it's like career wise or a small like little hobby on the side, if you don't have some type of heart in it and you're not like into it. That's hard, but kind of like maybe not worthwhile hard work. It's just hard.
Yeah. And I think it's hard to avoid those situations, especially with how many people there are. Like, just generally, it's very, very competitive in a lot of fields. And it seems rare to be an individual that can find something they genuinely enjoy that's not hard work and actually make that into a business. You know what I mean? Like, that seems like and I don't know if that's changed throughout like recent history, where things have just like does hard work not necessarily pay off as much as it used to? That's a question I'm wondering about, you know what I mean? Like it's just a lot more competitive, I feel like, these days than maybe it once was, where it's like, oh, you work hard, you go to school, and you're basically guaranteed. Well, again, I obviously didn't live that time, but what it seemed like was the likelihood of you to get the results was higher.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure. Has the level of hard work required gone up? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I would in some way think it is, just because there's more people, and are there that many openings? You know what I mean? Like oftentimes you'll see in business where there'll be one company or maybe a couple that rise to the top. Like you'll see that with like Uber, for example. Like they make it, and there's like nobody else who's really gonna make it there. With like musicians, and Sammy, you've been in that space where a select few rise to the top, but there's so many other people trying to make it, and there's just it's almost it's a numbers game in a sense, and the percentages aren't definitely not in your favor.
I definitely feel for sure with something like music or something like that, there's definitely an element of like uncontrollable, almost like I don't know if I want to call it luck, but almost like a right place, right time to certain like aspects of it. But there's also like those passion style pursuits are probably more competitive just because they're more fun too. You just get so many more people in those kind of things, you know.
Definitely.
I have a question for both of you. Can you give an example? Because hard work is definitely subjective to each person. Also, a little bit of an abstract term. Can we take it and apply it? Ollie, can you give an example of like what you consider hard work within a day, and then on a bigger scale, what's a goal in your life that was longer and you worked hard over a longer period of time?
Right. So, to me, I feel like hard work is doing things that aren't necessarily super enjoyable. And that's why I was saying if somebody really loves what they do, they're not necessarily actually working that hard. You know what I mean? So, but to me, the work is doing things that you obviously, everything considered, if you end up doing it, you could say you wanted to do it because you consider all the factors and you ended up doing it, but it's things that aren't super enjoyable, especially while you're doing them. And what comes to mind right away is just, especially with that long-term example you wanted me to give, is the running and training for the half marathon, where there were a lot of days where I didn't want to run, and a lot of days where I would start running and want to quit. So it was not actually that enjoyable, but I was training for that long-term half marathon for a couple months, and I guess I felt good about the
but that's an interesting one though, because you could potentially be working just as hard, but if it's something that you like doing, you might not feel like it's hard work, and therefore you don't feel like you're putting in the time. Yeah, because to me the work is almost how much resistance is there, right? And if there's no resistance for you to be doing the actions, then it's not actually that much work. And then, like I was saying before, it'll appear like work to other people, but to you it's no problem because you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
And I think those are the things you want to try to find, because that's where you're going to be able to excel, and that's where you're going to be able to beat out the competition, because for you it's not even hard work to be putting in the hours, but for other people it's like that's a grind to be doing that. Yeah, definitely. I feel like being in school helps develop the skill of working hard in all sorts of environments and working against different elements and levels of resistance, because in school, to get a degree or diploma or any type of accreditation, you're doing some work that you don't want to do. There's always going to be courses you're not as interested in, and you do have to practice, or are you kind of, to be successful, have to get to the level where you're
you can put in the work and go against the resistance.
Yeah, that's definitely a classic example a lot of people could relate to. And that one didn't come to mind to me initially for some reason. But yeah, for sure, that's one.
One thing I'm finding, like, being in school again now is, like, I was so used to, like, physical hard work, just working, like, landscape construction for years and years. And, like, that was what I was used to. And now I'm just, like, this year I've been realizing, like, the intellectual hard work, which is like a whole, I feel like I haven't really experienced it on this level before. It's a whole other basket of apples for sure.
Right, yeah.
And it's like, it's just crazy how exhausted I can get, like, from, like, sitting at a computer and thinking. Sometimes I'll be, like, way more tired than I feel like I would be working, like, 10 hours outside doing construction.
That's a great example, I feel like, of like your personal hard work experience with being in school, and how that is different. And it made me think about, similarly, like you said with your example of running, Ollie, running for me, as much as it's physically exhausting, it is the mental hard work that I'm doing that is actually harder for me.
Right.
And it's not that my muscles are tired and that my body can't handle it. It's first is the mental hard work, and then is second to that is like, okay, physically am I in shape and fit enough? But really the mental battle is the hardest part for me. Yeah,
because physically often you could keep going, but it's usually the mental that gets exhausted first, and the running, at least for me, and I think for most people, because otherwise you'd literally just collapse, like, you're done.
Right. So I guess even as subjective as hard work is, and, you know, writing an essay for you, Sammy, might not be as tiring as writing an essay for me. However, what's universal about hard work is that it does start in the mind, and it is the resistance piece where you are overcoming something, and we can all relate to that, whether our hard work is the same or different than someone else's.
Right.
Yeah, because I think that some people could even play video games and consider that hard work. Like, if we got mom,
I would
for you too, yeah. But like,
I'm not about to. You'd have to pay me to, like, sit and play a video game. I'd be like, are we done yet?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Like, for a lot of people, that's their leisure fun time, but for you, that's hard work. Like, if it was your job to play video games for 8 hours a day, you'd be like, this is exhausting. But some people, no problem. That's light work for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure if I went into your workplace, Ollie, and tried to do your job, the mental resistance would be pretty challenging. And I'm thinking, when you start a new job, actually, it always seems like harder work, and you get to a point where you're in that job for a while and you feel a lot more comfortable with the tasks you're doing and in your role, and it no longer you're like, there's a chance you would say, oh, that's not as hard, but when I first started, this was really hard because of the learning curve too.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I don't think it's a good idea to find, if you encounter some high resistance and some hard work, to just say immediately, oh, this is not for me, because I think the resistance can go down as you get a little bit more proficient with it, because there is the classic thing.
The thing that you always say, Kailey, the problems don't get easier, you get tougher.
Yeah, I actually don't want to be taking the credit for that. Ollie says that all the time to me, and then I say it all the time to Sammy, and then
I think, and
then I gotta hand it down to someone else.
Yeah. I honestly don't even really remember saying that, but I maybe said that one time, but now it's going full circle.
It really stuck with me.
If I did say it, now it's back. Sammy just said it to me, so
yeah. There we go. But that's pretty much the idea that you were getting onto right there, I think.
Yeah, because they always say, like, I'm gonna butcher this big time. Actually, I'm trying to think of what it is, but it's like, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Okay, not bad. But yeah, so like, if you're trying to find the thing that you love, so that you're not working any days in your life. Yeah. And like we were saying before, try to find the thing that feels like play to you, but it's work to others.
The thing about that is, I feel like even the things that you love, it's like they still come with a lot of problems and challenges, but it's just like
Yeah.
a more acceptable set of problems and challenges.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
or-
I
or
don't think
the-
it'll be ever consistent.
How
I
do you
love
know?
this
Yeah,
every day.
because I
It
don't
won't
think
be.
it's like finding something you love isn't just like now it's easy street.
Mhm.
I feel like it's just either the results are like so good that you're willing to put up with some of these problems and stresses, so that in the end it doesn't feel like you're just grinding for no reason.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that, like, yeah, in any field, you may not love it at first, but it could end up becoming something that you really, really enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Or
agree.
you'll love part of it, and there's other aspects that are very challenging and feel like work to you. Because I can think of this podcast. For me, there's a lot of aspects that I really like, and it's not super difficult to put in the time and effort, whatever it is that's required to create it. But then there are some aspects that are challenging for me and can be higher resistance and more exhausting.
Yeah.
But I think that's really, if you want to go in for anything really, I feel like it's unlikely that the entirety of the thing you're gonna just love all of it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I think that's a big one. It's a good point, Ollie, is before, like, acknowledging the acceptance that there will be, it won't all be good. Like, that's not how it works. That's not how anything works. And I was wondering, do you guys have any tips for and don't just say when you know, because
You're gonna say that.
That's my answer.
Yeah.
because there is that line of keep working at something, and you know, the mental battle and working hard, and you might learn to enjoy something, and then when do you know when to quit and say this isn't for me? So what are your tips for how do you know?
That's a hard one, because I feel like kind of what you were just saying, Ollie, like sometimes you have to just stick with something for a long time before you even realize that you like it.
Do you
Because
have
at
an
first
example?
there's resistance. Examples.
Okay, I
Was
think-
music for you ever something that you just had to work at for a while, or was it always a passion? Always you found the joy in it. There wasn't the mental battles.
Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting one, because it is like, it's very challenging. And like when I'd pick it up, it was like, it's hard work, but I think it's like kind of what I was saying earlier, where I just like, in those situations where you're working hard, I would think about the results and like how much I would enjoy being able to play like a guitar very well or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so for that, it was like, it felt less like hard work in a way. It kind of goes back to that being curious about what you could become, like you were saying, Ollie.
Yeah.
But whereas that same effort for somebody else could be like a terrible experience.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like me, I have the passion, joy from playing music.
No. And I think it's almost, it would put a bad false expectation if you were to think that you're going to find the thing that it's going to be no resistance. I think you want to expect that it will be a continual battle, but there'll be some things that are less.
Yeah.
So,
And I feel like what makes you really enjoy things sometimes is having like a deeper understanding of them, which
Mhm.
takes like a long time.
right.
Like you almost have to put in the hours, like to work at something for like a year or two.
Yeah.
And then you're
Right.
like, oh, okay.
I guess
So it's like, I feel like there's no easy answer for like kind of finding your passion, which maybe was
do you
kind of
think
your question. But
yeah, along with the 10,000 hours, for those that haven't heard, apparently to be is it an expert or just kind of like, I don't know,
Yeah. I don't
well
know,
versed,
master or whatever. like,
whatever, you
wanna-
put
yeah.
10,000 hours into something, and perhaps part of that idea is that if you spend 10,000 hours at something, you'll be able to find joys in it. So it's partly that at the end of 10,000 hours you might enjoy something to a point where you're good at it and you continue doing it, and that's part of the journey, is that it takes time to find like true meaning in what
Yeah.
you're doing.
Yeah, and to come back to what we said at the beginning, you definitely, if you're planning on doing the 10,000 hours thing, you definitely want to take the time to plan it out and figure, is this
Yeah.
actually going to end up
it's
giving me the
10,000
result I want?
hours,
That's
roughly
a lot
10
of time.
years.
I don't know.
I thought it was like about approximately 10 years.
Yeah, I don't know. Depend how many hours you put in a day, but
I do think you, maybe not 10 years, but sometimes you have to spend like a year with something. before you can accurately like decide whether or not,
or before you even really
you.
like, you start to. Sometimes I find you start to enjoy things more as you get better at them. Like, I found that with the Muay Thai, like kickboxing. When you first start, you're like, oh, I barely know how to punch and kick and like all this stuff.
And it's
like,
easy to just
I
quit
suck,
right
and
there.
you feel worse about it, but you actually start to enjoy it more once you start to get.
That's a huge factor
skills.
for me. Unfortunately, maybe
I think
if
for
I
everyone,
have confidence in something, I enjoy it more. If I feel like I'm bad at something, and especially if you're in a group where everyone else seems to be really good at something, and you're there like, I don't know what I'm doing, your self-esteem isn't high, and why would you want to continue?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing I learned recently about hard work is like sometimes people who are like quote unquote a natural at something, they're actually in the long run for like just working hard and work ethic and stuff, they're kind of at a disadvantage just in the way that like they don't learn to go through these struggles like somebody who is potentially not a natural at this thing and they have to work really hard, like you were just saying Muay Thai or something, right where it's like, you know what it's like now to struggle and put in the hard work and then develop the skill and be like happy with those results. Yeah,
that's a good point. And I hear Joe Rogan, when he's doing the UFC commentary, talk about that a fair bit, about how there's some fighters that were just naturally so talented that they were able to get to a pretty high level without really even working that hard. Obviously, like not working as hard as some of the other guys. They probably still worked fairly hard, but like the idea is that the other guys, when they get into like deeper waters and it really sucks, they're far more comfortable in that area because they are used to pushing through heavy loads of resistance, whereas the other people aren't quite as used to it. So the way he puts it, I think, is that like these super talented fighters, when it gets to like the big moments where they do start to get pressured a little harder and the resistance is a little higher, they often sometimes don't do as well as some of the other guys that aren't as talented, but they're just used to pushing harder.
Exactly.
Sure. Yeah, and it's true to think that hard work often isn't an external accomplishment. It's often something that you feel internally, and only you know the extent to which you've pushed past resistance or you've worked really hard. And you know, we don't have to get too much into it, but just quickly, a reminder that comparing yourself to others really isn't worthwhile, because hard work is so subjective, and your own hard work only you will know what you've overcome.
And Sammy, you mentioned the curiosity thing a few minutes ago, and I just so I don't forget, I wanted to touch on that a little bit, because if people are wondering, or even for myself, if I'm trying to enhance that force of curiosity to push me to do more work, how can you do that? And I think part of it is, I guess, taking the work and taking the time to examine and think about the potential for the future, because I do think that if you're more future oriented, you'll be more likely to work hard, because essentially what hard work is a sacrifice for the present for a reward in the future. You're putting in a grind now so that later you'll get something good, because if you weren't thinking about the future and maybe there was like a week left on Earth, why are you going to work so hard? Like enjoy, in take in like the pleasures and all that. Right. So hard work is often a sacrifice. And so in that sense, I think thinking more about your future could actually lead to you desiring to work hard a little bit more.
Right. Yeah. That's like the hard life now, easy life later. Yeah. Or easy life now, hard life later.
So many good
sayings. Yeah. Whichever one you prefer, take one or the other.
Yeah, I like that. Is there something currently that you're working hard on, Sammy? What's hard work look like for Sammy today?
For me, I'm trying to I started trying to do Muay Thai with Ollie, and basically just physical health in general, which I used to just like eat McDonald's and drink a lot all the time, which I feel like is the example of easy life now, but that creates the hard life later. once you're like in terrible shape later on.
Mm-hmm.
But now I've done the old switch, hard life now, which I'm trying to just get in really good physical shape and eat healthier so I can enjoy the easy life later.
Right. The old switcheroo.
Yeah.
Good to see it.
That's great.
Yeah. And what I find interesting is that it's not always the case that working hard would be beneficial. Like if your society was structured so like it's really uncertain, the future is very, very uncertain, and your work now may actually not pay off. Like if things are just fluctuating all the time, and it's you have no idea whether you going to school is really going to pay off, it might actually be a better strategy not to spend all that time and effort. Right. Luckily, the society we live in is pretty stable, and the odds are that if you put work in now, you're going to be healthy by the time you're 5 years later, and things are still going to be pretty okay. But in that sense, it's not always that hard work is super valuable.
I always love a good pros and cons list. So if you're thinking of diving into a new goal or trying to work hard towards something, I'd say do a little pros and cons up and see what's what.
Yeah, a little pros and cons. Do you want to do one of those right now if you're such a fan?
Should we do the pros and cons of making pros and cons lists?
Oh,
yeah.
gosh.
Oh my god.
Really get to the root of it.
Yeah. Well, I just like to do that. I don't know. I guess, okay, for running a half marathon, which I'm hoping to do soon, I would write a pros and cons list of why I want to do it in the pros section and come up with those reasons. And then the cons, for example, like you said, if there is some instability for running, let's say, maybe I have a reoccurring injury, and it's like a con would be I might actually be doing more damage for later in the future. So does that outweigh the benefits of the accomplishment, the building my cardio and being healthier and
the trophies,
whatever else, and the trophies
medal
that I'll inevitably win? Or are the cons to no, I won't win any trophies, but
hey, don't be so hard on yourself.
Well,
but yeah, another thing too is that like hard work, like the trait they call conscientiousness, and we've had a bit of a history with that word, but
that's a big word for us.
Yeah, we had a bit of a mix up on what that
just
was.
A classic wrong definition, wrong time.
Yeah, one of those situations. But it essentially means hard work, and that trait is like any other trait, like extroversion, introversion, all that stuff, that to a certain degree it's like a natural thing, where some people may just be more conscientious, and hard work and being like dutiful is more just part of their personality. Do you guys see that at all? Like with some people where it just seems like they just like to work, like even though it's not even play for them, like we were describing in that other scenario, like they genuinely just have they're just a bit more of a worker bee than some other people.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a hard one to say yes or no to, because it's hard to know.
I feel like I like to be working all the time. Like, and I feel like that might come from the feeling like it's either you're progressing or you're getting worse. Right. And like, if I'm not doing anything, I just feel like it's not a good feeling.
You mentioned before productivity, and for both of you, productivity is huge for your sense of accomplishment and sense of worth.
Yeah, for sure.
So I suppose
I don't know if that's healthy. For sure, but
I don't know.
It's hard to say, and it'd be hard to detach that. I don't know how like deeply ingrained that would be in both of us, but like that's another reason why people would work hard, is that to them it's like a virtue to work hard, and it's something they attach their self-worth to. Whereas I could picture maybe some people like just like hanging out on an island, like you always picture like island people like on island time, a little more relaxed. Where in that scenario, hard work may not be as valuable. It's more like, hey, let's just enjoy, let's just relax. Like they might see someone working so hard and be like relax, like what are you doing, like, you know what I mean? And and so I think in some set of societies, hard work is very much put up on a pedestal as a virtue. Right. And then in some, maybe it's not even. It's like, oh, like take it easy, like chill.
Yeah. And on a micro level within your friend group, family, whatever, your community, you might find that more or less and feel that a little bit more or less. Like we've talked about how our family, everyone dabbles in the running game, and we've talked about how, you know, if you see that so and so's gone for a run, or they say they've gone for a run, you're like, okay, well now I have to go for a run. And we kind of have that a little bit unspoken, that we all just want to work harder because we see the other people in our lives working harder. Yeah,
and it's interesting because I feel like I do get happiness from hard work and productivity. Yeah. Which is like, if you ask me to go hang out on an island for like a week and do nothing, like that doesn't sound like very fun to me. But if you were like, we should go to an island and do a training camp, and then I'd be like, hey, now we're talking.
Well, I have to give the example of, I went to Nicaragua with these two, and what ended up being the, again, unspoken routine of the morning. We do like a quick 2K run at 7 a.m. So you guys seem to just fall into the way of, where are we productive in this day? And you were like, well, let's go for a run.
I feel like I have to do it out of necessity. I don't know if Ollie, you might be similar, but it's like, if I'm not doing stuff like that, I easily, like, my mood goes way down.
For sure, yeah. And it's pretty crazy, especially with the exercising one. If I'm not working out and exercising consistently, I start to feel so much worse.
Yeah, me
like,
too.
Just mentally, not even physically. Yeah. I just like, I feel like garbage, but
I feel that for sure.
And it makes sense though that like you would find hard work to be really beneficial, because like we've talked, I think, on some of the other podcasts, a lot of the positive emotion that people get in life is as they're working towards a goal and seeing that they're progressing towards a goal. That's when they feel good. And one of the components that's going to lead you to progress towards your goals is working at them. So as you're working, it might be feeling like a grind a little bit, but a lot of time when you finish the work, you feel good. You're like, oh, I'm getting closer to that imagined future goal that I have of myself. So when you were doing your like band practice for trying to become a musician, and you finish each one, that image of you as like whatever it was for you, really famous musician, whatever, after each practice, you feel like you're getting a little closer to that, and that feels good. You're like, oh, I'm on the right path. And the only way to get closer to that is by working. I mean, working literally works. Like it does get you things. And but it's just important to figure out where the desire to work is coming from.
Yeah, I think is it kind of right to compare it to the habit equation of, you know, you have the craving maybe to succeed in some way, and then you have the reward as you continue on, and that's kind of part of it. But what
do you think about like burning out a little bit? Because I definitely, with the kind of way I guess my mind works like that, I'll definitely go to points where I'm just like, I'll totally burn myself out.
What does burnout look like? How do you know you've burnt out?
I guess I don't know. I just like so exhausted, and as a result start to feel like, I guess, depressed in that state of like working so much.
Yeah, like maybe like there was too much resistance, pretty much, that it just became overwhelming. Is that kind of it?
Yeah, or I feel too spread thin. Like I'll try and put hard work into like a lot of different things at the same time,
and then you don't get the satisfaction from anyone one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I find is that I think you can get more efficient and get better at being conscientious, because that, from what I've learned is that the trait conscientiousness is one of the more malleable ones, where you, let's say when you're young, you weren't very hardworking, but later as you get older, which tends to be what happens, is that you become more conscientious, and it's easier for you to do work. So I think that could potentially happen. And then kind of what we talked about a little bit on the stillness podcast is just trying to reduce the effects that the work has on you, so that like each challenging thing you do doesn't drain you quite as much. You're able to stay a little bit calmer in each one of those scenarios and a little bit more relaxed, so that each individual thing isn't draining you, so then you have more energy for later things.
Yeah. So something I'm realizing now too is like prioritizing like what I work hard on too.
Right.
I heard another quote. There's a lot of quotes this episode, but it was prioritize your time, or learn to prioritize your time, or somebody else will do it for you.
Right.
And I thought that was just kind of interesting, because like if you think about working at a job or something, like if you're basically not deciding what it is that you really want to spend your time on, somebody else is going to kind of ask you to start helping them. And it's like, can you stay late? Can you kind of do this? And then it's almost like you have to start learning how to say no a lot to things, or else, or like, I feel like that's kind of what would burn me out sometimes, try and do a lot of different things.
Yeah, I could see that happening for a lot of people. Yeah, where you, especially you hear like really like famous people talk about this, where they're getting invites to do all these things all the time.
Yeah.
And the importance of being able to say no increases, because there's just too much. And kind of like, I guess what we talked about on the stillness podcast was like, you need to limit your inputs if you want to be doing very well on the one thing. So you got to turn some stuff down.
Definitely. It's something I've practiced in recent times.
Yeah, you're good at that.
The ability of saying no. I'm good at saying no.
Oh yeah.
We'll be like, you want to do the podcast at 8? You're like, no. Actually, it's the opposite. You want to do it really early.
I want to do it really early, but I do feel like saying no is not, it's not mean and it's not bad. And when you're doing it for the right reasons and you're prioritizing what's best for you, then you can do it in a kind way.
Yeah, it's way better. And it's like, yeah, in a way it's like nicer to give the straight no, because I feel like I used to, when I didn't want to do something and someone asked me, I'd be like, oh, maybe, like, we'll see about that. And then you kind of just drag it out, and then you're like, you're stressing alone. You're like, I don't want to do it. I should tell them that.
And that's how you build resentment. I mean, if you agree to something and you as soon as you agree, you're like, I'm dreading this already. I don't want this to happen. I don't want to do this. And then you do it. And then in the process of doing it, you're angry and upset with that person. That's on you to have set that boundary and said no and communicate that, you know what, I don't want to do this. I don't want to let you down either. So how can we talk about this and come to a solution? But it's hard when, you know, someone's upset with you and after they've agreed to do something, you're like, well, this wasn't. Yeah,
that's one thing that I've heard before is like, never agree to do things that you don't want to do, because the end result is, like you're saying, it ends in resentment. Because you said, sure, I'll do that, but you didn't actually want to. Yeah. And that leads to problems.
And again, it's similar to, you know, it's hard to know maybe what you should continue to do and what you should stop, depending on what you're passionate about. And it is sometimes hard to know in the beginning whether quitting is the right choice or perseverance. And I think similarly, it's okay that sometimes you say, I wanted to do this because I felt obligated to, and I genuinely was trying to have a good attitude about it. And then also being human and saying, you know what, though, I am going to have to back out in a little bit of a last minute fashion because I don't want to end up resenting this process.
And
it's
Kailey,
hard.
With the like sticking through the situation that's work, that reminded me of what you were saying the other day about the kind of a podcast enemy of ours, or not necessarily enemy, but like a rival, you'd say.
I wouldn't say that.
A direct,
only you say that.
A direct competitor, similar size podcasts. Brene Brown.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys are neck and neck.
Neck and neck in the standings.
It's a close race, but
yeah, she actually has 2 podcasts.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll start up another one next week.
Yeah,
But-
she's probably gonna hear this and start sweating. She's like, oh,
Yeah, yeah.
man,
He's
here it
catching
comes."
up.
Yeah, he's catching up.
Yeah.
Calling
But
me out.
anyway, what you're saying is that you heard on the Brene Brown podcast that there was someone saying that she made her kid, or Brene herself made her kid swim for 365 days, even though on day 2 her kid was like, I want to quit, and she's like, no, you're sticking it through.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the sticking it through we were talking about. You think that's valuable? Or
Yeah, I don't know the details of that. So she said, like, yeah, her daughter signed up for swimming for a year-long commitment every single day, or you know, I don't know. That was what the message kind of was conveying, that it was every single day. And then on day 2, her daughter was like, no, I really don't want to swim. I'm not into swimming. I don't want to do it as this competitive activity. And her daughter ended up sticking with it. It actually wasn't clear whether Brene was like, you must do this, or like, you know, as a parent, like trying to get her to commit, or the daughter was also like, well, anyway, she ended up doing it. And I find that interesting. That stuck out to me. And the reason I brought it up to you, Ollie, is because I have a hard time with that. I have a hard time knowing when something is just hard work and difficult and uncomfortable, but it's worth pursuing, or it's difficult and uncomfortable and it's too much and I shouldn't keep pursuing it.
Yeah, that's the interesting one, because like, I don't know, if it was up to me, like growing up, I would have never went to school. I would have never went to extracurricular. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, go to school for the first day. I'm like, this sucks. I'm gonna stay home, play video games. But then it's like putting yourself in those situations where you have to learn math, and
Yeah, and
it's like beneficial overall.
We were talking about how I was telling you guys that I've read that giving kids responsibility even at a young age is helpful and practical for later in life, when they feel like they're contributing to the household and they have chores that they regularly do and some consistency to the expectation of their actions. And I think I totally agree with that. And then as an adult now, I don't want to be forced to do things I don't want to do. So it's kind of like, I know in theory that it's good to persevere through things you don't want to do.
Right.
And then now that I hold all the power, I'm like, I won't do that.
Yeah, but I feel like it's good to have that understanding of, like, if I, like for the swimming example, like now you know that if you put yourself in this uncomfortable situation and power through, you can potentially start to have fun and like accomplish. You can see your progress.
Yeah.
Like
and
maybe after the year, you're like, wow, I'm an amazing swimmer. Then I feel like having that experience going forward in life is really going to help you as you learn other things and find like your passion.
Yeah, for sure. And I think in the activity itself, let's say it is swimming, is a really small piece of the pie, when the rest of the pie is all of the internal things you can change, such as your attitude, your perspective, the skills that you're learning, which aren't just swimming. And those things are in your control. And so even if it's not an activity that's swimming, you really are like, wow, I'm so passionate about that. But rather, I'm so passionate about being a harder worker and going through something that's a little bit more challenging for me. And I'm not a natural like pro at it. And those things are always in your control to find and work on.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a good idea to give things a chance. But the question is for how long? Like a year? I don't know. I mean, it's really hard to say. Like, if you absolutely hate it for a whole year, you might end up resenting Brene Brown if she forced you to swim for 3 years. Yeah. Well, yeah, you might end up resenting your mom, Brene Brown, because if she made you swim for that long.
Okay, we can't, I don't know. We don't know for certain, but okay, I get what you're saying.
We're throwing
a
bit of disrespect towards Brene when we don't know the full story.
If you were to say,
you got a problem
never
with
do
it.
that.
Let's give each other one activity we think the other person should try.
Okay.
What would you recommend for Sammy that we think he should he should do? He should work hard on.
Maybe something to do with fashion.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah.
Would you used to sew as a young lad?
Yeah, that's right.
What happened to that?
Recently sewed a patch onto a jacket.
Okay, we're back.
All right,
Yeah. And we're back.
I spoke too soon. No, you used to make stuffed animals as a kid.
Yeah.
You made a few.
I hand sewed a cat, stuffed animal,
And a wiener dog.
and a wiener dog.
That's not bad.
So would you get into sewing your own clothes?
Would I get into?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, and that's funny you mentioned that because I thought about that, and I think I would like that.
There we go. I
Okay.
said fashion. You said sewing. Well,
So-
we're in a good spot here.
Yeah. So Sammy, done. Work hard at
Yeah.
that for the next year.
For 1 year.
And now for
come talk to
Ollie.
us. For me,
Yeah.
I don't say anything. You guys say stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think you should try watching movies every now and then.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
What if you, every day for a year for you to watch a movie, I think would be over. You would burn out
Yeah,
You would
that'd
burn
be
out.
exhausting.
Yeah,
dude.
yeah.
because watching movies for Ollie is not a fun pastime.
Ollie
so
doesn't watch movies. Ollie, when's the last time you watched a movie?
A few months ago, I watched Fight Club, but then before that was like a year ago.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I went to the movie theater within that year, but not often.
Maybe one movie a year for you?
Yeah, one
It's
to
gonna
two.
take you a long time to finish them all.
Yeah, I know.
you've
That's
got
the
a
thing.
lot of movies to
There's
catch up
way
on.
too many, and everybody's always saying, "Oh, you see this one? What do you think of that one?" And I'm like, "Gee, like to me that actually would be a lot of work." I'm like, I have a lot of catching up to do,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but
Yeah, you would have a lot of catching up to do. So, okay, something to consider for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think some fun art for you would be nice.
yeah,
Paint-
maybe a little painting, or something like that.
Painting or movies or music or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Putting
I'll
a lot on his
definitely
plate, but
consider, some sort of artistic endeavor.
yeah.
Because I feel bad sometimes. I'm too antsy. Like when I be watching a movie, I don't know. It's just a long time to sit down, and I have a tough time with that. But
yeah.
yeah, we'll give it a shot. I'll take that into consideration. And you,
Write in the
Kailey?
comments a movie recommendation for Ollie.
Yeah, please do.
A nice starter movie though. You don't want to scare him off.
No, a nice starter movie
Yeah,
for
something-
someone who's watched
something that's
maybe
not
a
too
dozen
hard.
movies in their
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. Okay, no, I used to watch a lot more, Kailey.
I know.
I just recently haven't.
Recent last 20 years or
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. No, I used to watch like all the movies, Disney, Lion King, all that.
Yeah.
You know?
That's how behind Ollie is on movies. He
Yeah.
thinks Lion King was
He's
a
like,
new
"Oh,
release.
yeah."
It's the last new release
Yeah,
he's seen.
The cartoon version.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I haven't seen the new one, but now we're on to Kailey. You're a tricky puzzle to solve.
I feel like you should try just screaming and freaking out sometimes. Like, maybe go to one of those rooms where you smash
Oh,
stuff. in
yes.
Oh, a break
Yeah.
room or breaking?
Yeah.
And just you're yelling and going haywire. Maybe have
Yeah.
a cup of coffee before.
Yeah, exactly.
I tend to be very reserved and rational, so maybe it could do me some good to just get rid of that rationale and
Yeah, just let loose for a little bit.
yeah.
It might be your passion.
Yeah. So for the next year, every day, you have a large Starbucks coffee and then go immediately to one of those break rooms where you just destroy microwaves and stuff.
That actually would be incredibly hard for me. One, I don't drink coffee, so the thought of drinking a large coffee is like, ugh.
Yeah,
no.
if Kelly drinks coffee, she goes haywire.
Right.
Yeah.
There is one thing that reminds me of that I kind of wanted to touch on, and I know Kaylee's got a hard set deadline. She's a busy lady, so she's got places to be. But I just wanted to talk about the idea of actually focusing on your weaknesses and working hard on those, because we kind of said earlier, maybe you want to try to find the things that feels like play to you and it's not really that much work.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the idea of try to find the things that are very hard for you and those are your weaknesses and focus on those?
Yeah, and I think we kind of that's a great point, Ollie, and it seems like we, without even saying it, almost did that for each other. You
Yeah.
know, we were like, what are
Yeah.
our weaknesses? And yeah, so I think that's really good
and
to
that-
think about that.
I also find that interesting, which Ollie, we've talked about this before, where it's like if you are at a job that you don't like, kind of like figuring out why you don't like it. And usually it might be because you're not necessarily like proficient in certain areas or something, or
Right.
you're anxious in here, and then see if you can develop those skills and then potentially turn your job into a more enjoyable experience, which I thought was really kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you work on those weaknesses, and then all of a sudden something you're doing becomes a much more positive experience.
Yeah. I really like that idea too, and I think that that's where you'll get some of the biggest rewards in life, is by overcoming some of your deepest weaknesses. And it might be best if you're able to tackle them in a situation that's not simply just your weakness. You're also maybe enjoying it in some other aspects. And not to say this is my biggest weakness, but for me, the podcast relates to that a lot, where like public speaking always was a big fear, and something that would make me very nervous and all that. And so there are aspects, like I was saying at the beginning of the podcast, that are very, very enjoyable, but then there are some that are kind of higher resistance and a little bit more draining for me. But
yeah,
part of it is the curiosity of how could you get better at one of the things that you were always so afraid of, and how rewarding would that be versus like those I think would be especially rewarding, getting good at something that you've been weak at, but they're going to be the more resistance things that are more challenging for sure.
Yeah. I love that idea of not accepting like just like I'm bad at public speaking, where you just kind of look at it like, okay, that's a skill that I haven't necessarily put time into developing it.
Yeah, that's huge.
Like,
for just that you change your thoughts on it, that it's not something that's done and you can never learn or get better at.
Right. And now we've gone just over an hour. I know Kailey's got to head out of here. And so we'll wrap this up. So the final message is hard work. It depends. Think about it.
Easy life now, hard life later. Hard life now, easy life later.
Yeah, just repeat that over and over, and hopefully you
work hard at something. Work hard at the right thing, but not too hard.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. Okay, we'll leave it there.
Okay. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.